I bring some sad news this morning. Michelle, who normally gives the theme time, is not well this morning. She's not feeling well. So I've asked Jean Cameron if she would, no. Oh, no? Okay. Thank you, Jean. I was hoping you would stand up so people at home could see who we're referring to. But anyway, Jean and I have this ongoing thing. She asked me about 6 weeks ago, I believe it is now, if I would lead the service and preach the sermon and eventually do theme time and stuff like that. But I know how this works. For those of you who are not aware of the council and how the council is set up, Susan can probably validate this quite easily. Is that about, a couple months ago, they're asked, here are the services and the Sundays that Jim is going to be away. Oh, that's fine. So we need to come up with somebody who can fill in. And so I'm sure the council probably, well, who can we ask? And they make a list of all these names, and they hand these names to Jean and say, Jean, would you please contact them and try to find somebody who will lead the service? And invariably, she comes back at the next council meeting, sorry, can't find anybody. And they say, okay, ask Mark.
That is not the way.
Anyway, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share in this from this side of the pulpit in the service. And I hope that there's something that I say, something that we sing, something that happens today, perhaps even being able to share some humor with Jean, is something that you can take home with you, that it's meaningful to you in some small way. So this morning, I want you to do a little bit of a test, I guess. Not really a test, but I want you to use your mind's eye. Can anyone here explain to me what I might mean by using your mind's eye? It's a term that we use quite often.
Imagination.
Your imagination, exactly. What can you think of when you close your eyes? What do you picture? So in your mind's eye this morning, I want you to envision something that represents peace. Now, it might be an experience that you had. This morning I was out walking my dog Leo at 6 o'clock, and it's so beautiful in the morning that is a real example of peace for me. What about in your mind? What type of things come to mind?
A mother nursing her baby.
A mother nursing her baby. Yes, holding a baby and especially when they sleep, it's just very peaceful. Oh yes, extremely peaceful. Another example.
The sunset over a calm lake.
A calm lake and the sunset. Yes, that is very beautiful. And the same with the sunrise over a calm lake. Yes, very peaceful. Anything else that comes to your mind? We either have a lot of turmoil going on inside of us right now, or just a lot of shy people. That's fine.
I like walking in a gentle rain.
Oh, what's that?
Walking in a gentle rain.
Walking in a gentle rain, yes. Not typically found in Saskatchewan, but usually goes sideways. But definitely, walking in a gentle rain that's warm, and you have a raincoat or an umbrella, and it's like you're dry, more or less. And so yes, that's beautiful. So there's a lot of things you can have as you picture peace. I want to present to you two images of peace that perhaps you might not have thought of, or perhaps you may have. So, in your mind's eye, I want you to split the screen. Now, okay, so on one side, I want you to envision what I'm going to be describing, and on the other side, I want you to compare it with what I'm going to be describing as well. So you can split it any way you want. It can be down the middle, or it can be horizontal, or in Jean's case, it could be diagonal. It's up to you. That's quite okay. Now, on one side, okay, I want you to close your eyes. Please just humor me at this point and close your eyes. And I want you on one side of that split screen, in your mind's eye, I want you to envision a lioness on the savannas in Africa, lying in the shade of a tree. Perhaps her cubs are playing nearby. And there's a sense of peace. Perhaps her eyes are closed and might even be able to hear her purring. And they do purr. So that's one sense of peace. Now on the other side of your split screen, I want you to envision a songbird. You can choose the songbird. It can be any bird at all, just a light little bird that's perched on a very delicate branch. But that branch is over a raging waterfall. The sound is deafening. There's mist that's coming up as the water hits the rocks below. And that little songbird is singing. So you have two images. How are they similar and how are they different? For me, the sense of peace that comes from the lion is, you can open your eyes now if you wish, or you can keep looking at that little songbird over the waterfall, that's fine. The essence of the sense of peace in both of those scenarios is that one has a sense of peace and is confident in her strength. She knows, the lioness knows, that there is nothing around her that could threaten her. She's at peace because of her strength. And on the other side, you have that little songbird that's at peace, is singing. Not because of their strength, but because they trust that that little branch that they are clinging to is going to hold them up amidst the waterfall and the violence and all the noise. And so the sense of peace is completely different. However, both are true. Both do represent peace, along with the walking in the rain and the sunset over a calm lake. All of those things represent peace. But for our case today, we're going to be talking a little bit more about peace, more in the line of that songbird, having peace through a sense of trust rather than a sense of strength. The sermon this morning is, I've entitled it Fear Not, but I'm not really sure exactly what the title would be or should be. And there's a sense that we are living in a time and an age where there is so much uncertainty. We mentioned earlier in the service about the inflation and the prices going up, and there are so many families around us. I don't know if anyone here is experiencing this, but there are so many families that are struggling between, do I pay the rent this month? Or do I buy groceries? Do I have to go to the food bank? They're really struggling financially because of the economic uncertainty that's going on as a result of the war in Iran, or whether it is a result of just greedy individuals who run the multinational corporations who charge us so much more than what they should be. But there is that sense of uncertainty. How do we find peace in this world? Peace has been kind of a theme in the news that's been going on for the last several weeks. Actually, since the incursion into Gaza and the war in Gaza, the topic of peace kind of lends into a ceasefire, which doesn't really mean peace, because a lot of the shooting and the missiles and the bombing still is going on. Is there really peace in those situations? Can there be peace? Perhaps we have some individuals who are in very high power in many of these countries that are involved, thinking primarily of a certain individual south of the border who thinks he's probably living in a world of peace. And that peace is like that lioness. He can go to sleep at night because he is confident in his strength. Definitely not in his intellect, but definitely he's confident in something. And he really proposes that the US military can obliterate and can destroy civilizations, etc., etc., etc. Is he really at peace? I don't know. Is he experiencing peace? Perhaps in his own way. But there is turmoil in this world around us, and there are so many individuals who cannot have a sense of peace based on their strength. And that's what I want to look at the other side of our mind's eye split screen. How can we, as individuals, look upon the turmoil and the struggles and the pain all around us and still be able to sing? Still be able to allow ourselves to have trust in that small little branch that we're perched on while the world is falling apart all around us? Well, part of it, I think, it can be found in Scripture, and I'm not here to propose any magical remedy, that's for sure. We are always going to experience turmoil and struggle for a sense of peace within our lives. That's human nature. But I want us to look at one example that's found in Scripture from Psalm 16. This is the psalm, one of the 73, 74, 75 Psalms that have been attributed to King David. And many attribute the writing of this psalm to be shortly after the time when he was experiencing some struggles in his life. Namely, he was being hunted down by the current king of Israel at that time, threatened to be assassinated. So as we read this, let us think about David's mind's eye. What is his thoughts? I'll read in the blue, and I want you to follow along. We're going to be singing a refrain. Shirley's going to be leading us with through it 3 times during this reading. Protect me, God, because I trust in you. I said to the Lord, you are my Lord. Every good thing I have comes from you. Let us sing together. David goes on to say, no, the Lord is all that I need. He takes care of me. My share in life has been pleasant. My part has been beautiful, and I praise the Lord because he guides me. Even at night, I feel his leading. I keep the Lord before me always. Because he is close by my side, I will not be hurt. So I rejoice, and I am glad. Even my body has hope. As I mentioned earlier, the quotes from Psalm 16 refer to a time when David was going through some real struggles and pain. One of those struggles happened quite early in his professional life, you could say, as a leader of Israel, or influencer, as we would call them today. David had been anointed to be king over Israel. And many of you may remember the story. Samuel gets a word from God, and he says, I want you to go, and I want you to go to the house of Jesse. And Jesse has 8 sons. I think it was 8, maybe 7. 7's kind of a perfect number. But anyway, however, there's many sons he has. And he says, one of those sons I will choose to be the next king. Now, there was already a king in Israel. Saul was king. And he had been anointed by Samuel about 25 years earlier. However, Saul, as though he started off following God and being faithful to God, pretty soon in his life, the power went to his head. Like other individuals we see around the world today who have a sense of power, whether it's financial power or whether it is political power, they can lose all sense of reality around them, and they become the center of the universe. That happened to Saul. And so God told Samuel, Samuel, we need a new king, because Saul has turned his back on me. And so, I haven't even started the sermon yet. Remember what I told you earlier? You can sleep, but no snoring. Poor Darren, I owe you one. I didn't mean to embarrass you. Okay, Saul had turned his back on God, and God said, we need a new king. And so Samuel goes across the nation of Israel, and he goes to the house of Jesse, and he sits down with Jesse, probably over some tea, maybe some cookies, something really nice and light, and says, I've been sent here to choose a new king for Israel. One of your sons will be chosen. Oh, Jesse, I know just the one. That would be the eldest. And so he brought in the eldest son. And Samuel looked at him and said, no. Very good qualities, be a good leader, probably an excellent patriarch for the future of your family. But no, he's not that's not the person God has chosen. And then he brings it, it must be my second oldest. And he brings in the next eldest, and the same thing happens. Samuel is waiting for God to say, yes, this is the one. And we know the story. You may be a little rusty. It's been a while since some of you have been in Sunday school, but I know I have. I'm very rusty at this. But when Jesse goes through all of his sons and Samuel says, no, none of these are whom God is choosing. Do you have any other sons? Oh, okay. Well, we got little David. David's out in the field looking after the sheep. He's a puny little guy. He's not very strong, and he plays the harp all the time. He sings to his sheep, and he's just useless. You don't want him. And Samuel says, we'll let God decide. And so Jesse sends one of his sons out to the fields to bring in David. And of course, we know what happens next. David is the chosen one. David is the one who will become the next king of Israel. Nobody would have foreseen it. Even Samuel was surprised. He was not expecting this. But David is chosen. And so it perhaps a report goes back to the king that Samuel, who is the chief prophet, kind of like the religious leader in the whole country, has gone to visit Jesse. Well, why has he gone to visit Jesse? What's going on here? Oh, something about a new king. What? And Saul's really kind of apprehensive. And rumors come back to the palace that there is a new king that has been chosen in Israel. Well, we'll have to see about this. He's not going to let anybody take away his power and his influence, his authority. Not even God. And so they happen to be at war at that time with the Philistines. And some of you may know of a certain warrior that was a Philistine. Anyone know his name? Quite famous. Goliath, yes. Goliath wasn't really winning all that many battles. All he had to do was stand up in front of the enemy armies, and basically they quivered in fear, because here's this giant of a man. He was probably well over 7 feet tall, which any of you who follow the NBA realize that that's quite normal nowadays. But back then, when the average person was probably, the average male was probably about, well, probably shorter than I am, probably 5'3", 5'4", 7 feet was quite imposing. And it says that he had his armor and he could carry his shield, and his sword was larger than anything that any other warrior could handle, let alone use in battle. And the Philistines said, "Hey, Israelites, let's make this war, let's have a ceasefire. Oh, you can have peace. All we want is that you just lay down your arms, or at least send us your best warrior who can conquer and defeat Goliath, and if that happens, we'll go home." Oh, sounds like a pretty good deal. Saul wants to find out who is the best warrior we have to go on this suicide mission, but still, who is the best warrior? At least we have a chance, a hope. Nobody comes forward, except one person volunteers. David. David was pretty good with the slingshot. He said, "All I need are 5 stones." And he goes out and he chooses 5 smooth river stones that are just the right size. And then as he goes out into the battlefield, in the middle of the battlefield, he's about to face this giant of a man, Goliath. And of course, you could just hear the murmurs on his old side, the Israelites going, what? How can he defeat Goliath? And then the laughter, the roarious laughter on the other side of the Philistine army saying, "Ha, they send us a child who is going to try to defeat the best warrior in the world." Well, we know the story. We know how it ends. David does defeat Goliath with the slingshot. It could have been probably like a tomahawk missile today. It was sent over quite a distance, struck its mark, and Goliath falls down dead. And back then, warring armies kept their word. And the Philistines said, "Whoa, we're out of here." And they experienced peace after that. So Saul should have welcomed David with open arms. And he did for a while, kind of put on a show. He is our new leader. He's our new sort of the best warrior in the whole land. That didn't last very long, because Saul also knew that this David was the one he's been hearing the rumors about, who's going to become the next king. So after they had chased the Philistines back to their own country, Saul chose 3,000 of his best warriors to go on a special mission. We're going to hunt down this David, and we're going to put him out of commission once and for all. And so Saul is with his 3,000 of the best warriors, his royal guard, if you want to call them that. And he, they're walking along on the eastern shore of the Dead Sea, looking for David, who's out hiding with some of his friends, his followers, his helpers, because they know that David's going to be assassinated. Or at least imprisoned and locked up for the rest of his life, whatever the case. They don't want to get caught. So they're hiding. And they're hiding in these caves that are found along the eastern shore of the Dead Sea. And if you want to read about this, and I highly recommend, if you want to read one chapter, your homework for this week, read 1 Samuel chapter 24, which describes what happens next. You see, Saul being, a typical individual, getting on in age, and probably had too much coffee to drink that morning. Well, he's going along these caves and he has to relieve himself. That's in the Bible. Yep, he has to go wee-wee. And so he's looking around, where's the best place to go? Well, there's all these caves that shepherds have kind of partially boarded up or walled up with stone, the entryways, so that they could go in a safe place at night to keep their flocks safe from wolves and that type of thing. And so he says, here's some caves along here. I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to be gone for a few minutes, and you make sure that David doesn't show up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And anyway, He goes in this cave. Little does he know that David and his followers are also in the same cave. And there are hundreds of caves on this hillside. He chose the one that David happened to be in. And they're hiding in the back in the recesses in the dark. And Saul doesn't know they're there, of course. And he relieves himself. Well, David's followers say, now's the time. Go up and kill the king, and your problems will be solved, and you will become king. David said, no. God anointed Saul to be king, and I respect that. I will not kill him this way. I will not become king over someone else's blood. And so he goes up, he sneaks up behind Saul, takes the corner of his robe, and cuts a piece of cloth out of it, and scurries back quietly into the recesses of the cave. Saul comes out. Oh, well, let's get on our way now. And he gets on his horse, and his 3,000 men are all around him, and they're starting to walk away or march away or whatever they do in the desert. And David comes out of the cave, holds up the cloth. Very distinctive, the color and the fabric that only the king is allowed to wear. And he said, Saul, I have chosen not to kill you this day, but I want you to know that God will judge you and God will look after the things that will happen in your life. And Saul realized he could have been killed very easily. And he realizes that mercy was what prevented him from being assassinated. And he said, David, truly, you are a man of mercy, and you have the right to become the next king. And it doesn't say it in Scripture, but basically he adds, over my dead body. But when I die, then you can become king. And that's what happened. But in the story, we have Saul, who is, in a sense of peace with his power, being disrupted by this usurper, this young boy of a man who is going to become the next king. And David is very much, as we just read, he said, my trust is in the Lord. He could have called upon an uprising, a revolution against this evil king, Saul, but he didn't. He waited for God's timing, trusting that God's promise would come true, that God would look after him. He said, even during the day and even at night, I'm at peace because God is with me. Last week, we saw a story, or we read a story about the women at the tomb and the empty tomb. And Pastor Jim points out that it's a result of their faith and courage that they went there in the first place. It's my prayer that today we might get a better sense of faith in God in our own lives, trusting in one who knows the beginning from the end, because I know we certainly don't.